10.
Yeah.
So you need to move.
Thank you. No, you're fine. Oh, weird room. Am I gonna be on the video?
Yes.
Okay. That's my only concern. Not being camera.
Try not to shake the table that much because the whole thing shakes. Yeah. It'll be fine. It's not a big deal.
Your laptop. Is your laptop true? Yeah.
Make sure it's on.
I'll let you know if the mic turns off.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone's got the app.
Hold on. I actually just had to restart my entire computer.
It's the disclosure doc we sent you was the second one. So. Alright, everyone else good? Okay, we'll start. You must have something. Advantage every increment reduction. Velocity, motion, point, acceleration, and velocity means I made so much really augmented by feedback with sugar greenhouse data. Over to the box here, extinct no one knows whether the threshold lights run away. The greenhouse is much easier to initiate than thought in a box shape, which or the water burning, the lowering the vastness of fossils get us there to cooling costs example. Distribution of CO2 strategy is 60% of radiation of cooling and the other cooling support in. When CO2 threshold is across the strategy, must break up temperatures rise by 8 degrees. This effect adds to the feedback pressure there, whatever. And to greenhouse making sure we keep burning fossil fuels closer to the end of the same point in apparently existence. Or not just our species, but the entire planet is very safe. Degree duration of a continual inhabit. A degree makes a huge difference. 1.7 billion explosive planes. Really reach up a lot. I think 90% have a degree. But make a huge difference because we're not yet doing the other pathways to geothermal when solar nuclear can reduce consumption of bio switch. Electric is not too late to never reach 1.5 is better than 2, 2 is better than 2.5 and so on. And before that point, it triggers every other existential risk camp. So many theological will not be needed to trigger catastrophic risk as still exists as testimony or to be at least convincing that analysis is a recent science and the miracle figures based on studies and knowledge Permian and an assessment of the components of the soil regarding the face of uncertainty relies on the most precedent most reliable precedent using it not be ruled out 40 degrees warming Hurricane NYC native deposit global SAI percentage of stock on synthesizing the wash defense different program defects nuclear war recon entering global nuclear war global fish stocks have been affected by acidification change in wildlife entering new pandemics and planned evacuation of safety facilities that release of small modified small box around Jerusalem fail humanity as years and emissions will trigger acidification which collapses global fish population data entering the ocean city done about you can see later across habitat better drop metal bulk as well entering the whole ocean fish supply chain population of fish acidification is better 40% of global population mitigation changes in the solution of the oceanic sources and extinction curve 23 complicated originally with charges leading to disputes over drilling fish accidental threats by allowing nuclear conflict even eliminating conflict equals to land nuclear can already have service no trigger ever the worst that is such nuclear atomic weapon called in the hands of warlords and marine and I also got sulfide rate extinction curves 22 human actions sending across the front of the ocean where we can underlie from the knobs waters out even when you're running means of oxygen generates the hydrogen sulfide issues for the atmosphere to apply necessary to poisons all vegetation animals have this thinking that way get triggered by human carbon and adoption is unsustainable and uncertainty warrants caution not complacency make often 24 the idea that common non-leaf pop trade currency for example the 30 even at 13% people who are probably using the WNF places to arrive at IEC chemistry that happens to achieve skepticism comes out with combat versus social to not game but besides the extended metabolize the concept consensus claims there's no lack of research like on how you sensitive to should not be so caution like other common sciences who can believe the claims are some is more likely to have increased conflict disease or asynchronous synopsis is not enough to extrapolate from a current growth in second or whether humans can adapt and 6 points are likely and catastrophic at maximum immediate abatement of HO 24 CO2 result in more or intersection because of time like change GHGs interclimate response emissions that exceed realistically the changes so fast humans have exceeded that already have difficulty adapting points can be affected to another custody and accident or Antarctica or structural weakness get this like sugar tea a residence of nothing or current problem for the earth or the earth changes greater and anticipated and anticipated change EVG without the emission reduction jeopardizing the US window or the brand MS damage is narrow delaying and mitigate one way to make difficult evidence immediate response minor changes led out of the level of source a major risk and only a carbon tax sufficient one energy demand and economy like cost is key literally 21 there's a bug in the text we will allow carbon on price and transaction of prices beyond that fixes the price on carbon must be economy-wide reducing emissions of price aligns with the sensitivity on businesses and individuals low carbon level employing energy efficiency with minimal admirable challenges put us on a durable path to economic targets of order adjustment will include the new southern countries the US is 100% more carbon efficient than China, India, and Russia and it solves carbon inelasticity Marshall it's only new people studies report that consumers are responsive to price change by taxation by citizens and environment various costs over long-term and short-term how to hikes right now tax are the most powerful instrument how to ECD have to prices like US would consider it comes down to 30% higher you can be sold out of description who are the car some drugs that are sensitive that do nothing but emissions that existing vehicles fail to simulate demand 2 low carbon innovation logic and 20 attacks will work immediately with all accomplish 30 years of pending quarter conference and will give US passive decarbonization to the board of benefits will employ companies in transition voting markets certainly to us companies confidence certainly over conference now CNC companies will ride low carbon egos for consumers that is searching markets are 20 members will offer credible path and various myself while pricing is certainly private certainly private sector will change opportunities that economize economies as conscious of violate taxes even though because of the sheer hard the price of carbon and that's getting their carbon hard to waste sector rugby 24 sector means that the second step is top of the back up and chemicals that you see behind capture because looking at the prices on hydrogen mix arguments that are too expensive traditional policies from harder basic and only stick to the code outcomes gives the key solution object right undercut by possible alternative required by carbon price 3 international emissions modeling and good people and fail walk tomorrow nation policy to consider fundamentals is not to see if the ocean carbon price longer just when you would official the community line would be low and rapid it is a threshold that hydrogen emissions trade off significant effects and energy global price is very difficult for countries to priorities and considerations and BC is also the kitchen incentivized global action over Clark 22 We're just French manufacturers moving over to people US are on the just China and Russia is talking about United States and responses how we get others acting incentives that keep the fees of church the other countries we line up there implement our Canada Japan we're talking about the whole China and EU excuse we can inspire countries to pursue reductions that's the plan the United States federal government should adopt a substantial border adjusted and annually increasing carbon tax advantage to manufacturing area the internal combustion engine is over in EV years that falls between problems of American demand and Chinese carbon intensity to China a definitive edge driven between where EV adoption is moving about 7 years that already developed the charging models additions and already moving the rapid but as opposed to accelerate some talking about looking at the dynamic after about the advanced manual to be organized what other just the third comes from them so GBP is good but the losing about the manual standards lower the globalization back to companies we had electrical payers and yes nothing new whatever probably less EVs instructing on that developing now for EVs the road cars are going to be better for the US higher carbon for Chinese production to the border just so US aren't at a disadvantage and Biden's playing catch up but despite the IRA and tariffs American autos at the verge of capital and China's keeping cheap and carbon is crushing the Western auto economies they've been it's going to go about more comfortable to the cars on EVs from China's China opportunity to go house just going to the buildings that home grid and home grid understanding ecosystem to make sure that it doesn't go to waste the followed the sacrifice in the Los and the Wilson China, as the undisputed winner, not to get church of the not here to shoot the sense of the US and Algeria to the Galilee, the future, the future, automotives and so much of the job of strangers and the secretary, so that work like a clear sector gas goes through this one industry that not big enough to have enough security to value of the terrorist $18 million to find out if I expect the overall trade disorder protection, investing in domestic auto, and China will replicate the market flow strategy of other carbon intensive goods, destroying future growth. These between for China's doubling down on policy that's what the terms global growth, leadership to expand social demand because it's support as an enable sustainable growth and sector aviation, investment in manufacturing and export. China's supplying the market, nobody wants to increase it further this only day. Exit capacity, diminishing returns to the store prices, the mergers and investment firms that will do nothing little. Adjusted agencies taking into account global destination, not simple to push the US to start tariff targeting the carbon content of products to allow straight down will really determine the scope of the given these over industries over a plan, the field of inflation, motivation, reform policy, and China export control, the Krill's power to push the hawk sparking war, incentivizing domestic reform is key brings back to 22. A population raging rapidly aging rules out investment in the consumption of gross users, short circuit, showing advantage on markets for exports, but we dash China goes in the share, but they don't want to try out things that a moving period sector is used as set itself up to decide to buy that. Maybe not after she sees the stretchful for players, but we still struggling to come with other country development, MSU, reform, or other taking economic forms and redeterminate system, restructuring, CCP's legitimacy, and it was like the Chinese being wage, warfare pushing on but not for battle, and war goes nuclear extinction boot, and 20 US China avoid escalation at China normally years and Refutation once again because of nuclear use. We're going to make kind of visual detail of Pierce Israel, China not being going nuclear, China go check this out, result in the media. Escalation never doesn't refuse and then it's been launched in Nevada, says that and said that the Vietnam but continue to act actually because they have the recash is like essential and writing, plus the rest of the economy solves populism. Awesome 21 months at the Dems can look at blue collar out of the factory workers time in the last decade, but there's certain strongest also developers Republican on Dems. Because the cops in the law, probably the race lobbyist message and economic integration of but there's in the middle and the district and the community design residents are receptive to writing message with the rest of the times and economic fitting in lower kind of jobs and community transition the district that are letting patterns away from national institutions attributed to 2018 and 2020 and that perceives authoritarianism which arises institutionally out of us in 24 years neither immediate populism or pure bakers of authoritarianism on shake one attachment to democracy given time America again losing checks and balances not enough furious shuffling on is not enough government seen that years of chipping away at democracy these are lost institutions lines to show that has our ability to show the alien results in declining and anybody's long way from controlling another energetic politician going to galvanize that and then base it down under strong codes bringing the blue states to the guilty time to advance the credit to the Trump and not have it within bureaucracy or people that have a possibility to Trump and not gain the capacity mandate or consists of the cycle of the defending authoritarianism is effective over the election after will be more costly and authoritarianism causes nuclear war and extinction of Bufffield alternative to totalitarian state more work on those cooperative and inhibit progress under the democratic states without any about it forecasting risk and state generation work and speculation of basically the progress with totalitarian leader personalization of measures in terms of WD almost requires accomplishments of the pandemic climate change AI back technology organized supporting without locking NEG and space AFF extinction or surveillance or totalitarianism will risk extinction.
Good.
Yep.
Okay, let me move some computers on black face. Okay.
What does the price of the tax start at?
For the purpose of your disads and counterclaims, it starts at purpose for your disads, it starts at $25 and doubles annually. For the purpose of your counterclaims, we don't think they're going to
Increase it by 25 annually.
Yeah,
25 annually. What evidence says that's sufficient to solve climate change?
We've read evidence that that a price of that would be sufficient to solve IPCC and keep under 1.5 or solve the IPCC.
And the card you'll point to that says that is what?
What'd you say?
The card you'll point to that says that is what?
$25 non-noisy.
Yeah. But
So as of the one I see, you don't solve warming.
as of the one I see, we have read cards saying a substantial carbon price would solve warming, which is what we've done.
Okay. Is that the same price for the BTA?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, for countries that do not have an equal or greater carbon price, yes.
Okay, and it can only be adjusted up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The BTA, which countries follow on post-plan?
Every country that trades with the United States or every country that trades with a company or with a country that trades with the United States, you would say.
And, okay.
Trades carbon intensive goods.
Sure, so the China impact on the second advantage.
Yeah.
So, in order to win, correct me if I'm wrong, in order to win this advantage, you need to win, first, the export collapse happens, 2, that Xi gets replaced, and 3, then a war starts.
For the first scenario, yes.
Okay,
The second scenario is distinctive about U.S. authoritarianism.
okay. The Rust Belt economy scenario,
Yep.
your Austin evidence says economic deterioration is the root cause of, like, populism rising in those areas. What evidence have you read that says pricing is key?
We've read evidence saying that Rust Belt economic deterioration happens as a result of not catching up in the EV race. So pricing is key because we would incentivize development of EVs.
So the only reason those economies are deteriorating is because we're not producing EVs?
Well, those economies are largely based on auto. We've read predictive evidence saying that the auto industry will collapse, and because of Chinese
And the plan is sufficient to solve the auto industry's collapse.
Yeah,
Why?
it forces the auto industry to change their practices because it would be more economically advantageous for them to develop.
And
It's more
taxes- and
economically-
taxes Chinese EVs.
It's more
Yeah.
it's more economically advantageous for them to do so now, but they're not.
Disagree. The David evidence says specifically the reason that they have not is because they are wedded to the profitable SUVs and trucks in the status quo.
Okay. The authoritarianism scenario, is it just like the United States starts a random war or there's a civil war? Like,
We think that United States would probably United States authoritarianism would probably be modeled internationally, but the scenario that we have read specifically in the YC is that the United States would start. Correct.
with who?
What do you mean with who?
With what country?
Well, the argument is not necessarily that like X person will go to war with X country, but rather that authoritarians are worse at conflict management. They are more likely to make decisions based off of their feelings.
So as of the 1AC, there is no like specific conflict that begins or ends because of
the
authoritarianism.
Belfield card says that it would raise the chance of WMD use. It also says that it would not be able to solve problems such as
Yeah.
pandemics or climate change.
Belfield's more about cooperating with other states.
7, warming, manufacturing. Would it be a problem for like the microphone if I spread from here so I can just like kind of face the folks, or is that gonna like blow it up?
You just move the microphone to me.
Okay. Where do you want it?
Straight there.
Sure. I kind of am on top of it. This kind of works. Is this like too close to everyone? Is that weird? No. Okay. Still not good. I can't see anything. Kansas, you're good.
Yes. The timer.
All three of you are good. Perfect. Zach, I'm gonna read out the timer.
Go ahead.
Okay. Harris wins now, man, hand on 23. Harris came in Westminster, made all these never been forecast. Silver to do Harris right in his lead in Parliament 5 for posted by CBS News Poll. Has source of 4 beat national lead in 2 battleground states. Harris lost by trouble, but much group cash advantage and side advantage cash infrastructure. Carbon tax cost Harris the election. Lewis in 21 COT tax reversible voters in track time strategies understand it's lethal in general elections acceptable on the TL stock silver fund. Widespread opposition cost 60% of government should not tax emissions. Trump re-election caused extinction. Dresser in 24 Trump sees every government offer NATO across the board. Tariff cost spike inflation, immigration restriction, tariff growth, spike Brexit, best inflation by 20 to do like doubling down on Trump Ukraine. Lose with Russia, windows over neighbors, abandonment Ukraine, shelter with land architectures back, helping pursue Dallas, pursue heading into reassured about exodus, Brazil, continuity, and alliation, weakening, women's force, multiple land, American countries, fear, China's influences, otherwise, military action, also with Japan. The object of Israel, leading around wars, war, Iran, side Turkey, UAE, joining nuclear love, US and Chinese economy, several long-term growth, so long, believe, relatively more secure, greater possibility of understanding what it is, Pacific production, deep Brazil, US transmission. The next off-topical affirmatives must be a fixed price, allying of a few quarter OECMEI price, participants at a fixed price on pollution directly. It's a voter for limited ground, near infinite possibility. Variability is destroying link and counterpoint competition creates app conditionality because they can phase in over indiscriminate time to drop the bites or avoid disads like they tried to do in cross-sex. Now, next off the plan overstretches the IRS. Customer in 21 CDC introduces complexity and having burdens over funders reduces the amount that all introduces that complexity. Any taxes that would cost economists ignore actually getting the blended adjustment would be very difficult to set up if you really need how much taxes they have. Credible IRS is key to demonstrate state capacity. That's Anson and Kane is 22. The surface order delays because the funding complex never got to exasperated to behind IRS ability force tax limit for tax treatment. Lack of support for working ever rock share isolating rules avoiding state capacity ability function without IRS enforcing US government would collapse. Democratic state capacity solves great power war Maxman. NDC liberal trees are great use of Dr. Regain advantage people lost trust in institutions liberal beings able to establish acceptable necessary to achieve security rules heritage of democracy home officials of institutions rules norms and protect liberal democratic values. The next off is the counterpart the United States federal government should establish a carbon border adjustment mechanism including a tariff on Chinese electric vehicle imports and a clean energy standard to meet its nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement that solves its politically popular and solves warming because here the nation of political politics want to see us the national scale US enemies goals and living US is zero by 2050 unless those studies up CP national scale for less for state laws the line country and energy policy state creative passion requirement national CSRS existing running instead of retail strength national standards instead of 2060 real clean energy increase progress everywhere consumer new rock versus solar because 9% cost wind farm now 70% lower CSU reduce water use increase carbon low pollution take proven energy standards work. The next off the ash transition destabilizes overproducing countries causes war that kills billions spats. The 21 transition stabilizes fragile states about on the electrical support and plan turbine conversation leadership political survival like ideas among violent factions involved with cash on oil greening trade creates violence on the global scale generate new that the population will be in the billions institutional corruption decisions from all the workers and oil to control by the central lead to deals new implication for stability high oil prices company strong peace meeting when also the Islam increasing and then transition for release and new energy scramble creative price. The next off is The states contemplating the 50 states and the District of Columbia should establish an opt into a streamlined state carbon tax administration to coordinate a carbon tax. The SSCTA should recommend rules for uniform adoption of a substantially annually increasing carbon tax, make state cooperation with federal initiatives contingent on the federal government implementing a complementary carbon border adjustment mechanism, and opt into the SSCTA and implement in 20 years such a property rest conflict greatly enrich the corners of our economic features, conflicts, reducing efficiency, use of water resources, increase abundance, expansion, easy use, like use and active use, virtual limits, conflict elimination, are from the on the world diffuse conflict of reducing like activity, like reducing structuring, active use, money, bill, allocate scarce reduce efficiently, conflicts, never long history, muscle intensity, easy use, modified, remaining ones, active use, and active use, reducing conflict, expanding very fast and cover over a quarter. The global ocean cribs only degrees in Homeric Greek, not a scientist, cribbing 21, my degrees in Homeric Greek, so I didn't study science. Warming is not existential, that's Buchan. Buchnam in 23, 7, 9, 7, 0.5% papers, advanced warming poses crisis many neurosections, scientists, capital, catastrophic climate change, even temperature, be sorting catastrophe, earth climate refuses evidence of accident, protection, data models, not transition, no climate, transit weather decline, 9% CO2 greening, polar climate, core, southern, northern, floating, advice for new impact, sea level rises, 4% CO2 remain alkaline, such as green life adaptation, no message, science study cannot be dismissed as deniers. Its inevitable impacts are denied and adaptation checks. Buchnam, ancient government tries to this in the US have will identify 3 forces CO2 absorb CO2 5 days like 3 million years at 3,000 ppm. Rain water regardless of phosphorus natural warming without scientific causing CO2 carbon dioxide not direct climate war under vapors 90% of heat trapping CO2 lead low where the CO2 benefiting earth adapts to water under CO2. The manufacturing advantage. China manufacturing surplus does not undermine or hurt or either US nor China's economy. Martin in front of the IMS China consumes China's policy fueling shares to replace China manufacturers only modifies on imports of the Beijing's policy could lead to China starting to completely invest and to be replaced with macro view action or balances German macroeconomic fundamentals. IMS message of returning US IMS analysis is indicating critique. Double blind China has already shifted to more domestic consumption that either solves the internal link or it will favor factors outside of the A's ability to solve precedent. 20 Ukraine efficiency of the economy. China's advertising person productivity recognizes you for manufacturing the government dual circulating global policy which arguments continue trade credit results of investing in man and home innovation. Chinese foreign tech and resistance with the estimate of Chinese exports more we're seeing credit and private had trillion credit entrepreneurship. China's exports do not damage the US economy, they backfire present. Independent action when China poses 30 years economic security over boomation or undervaluing currency tech industry backfire subsidizes steel. As a distinct rather than success policies like the plan trigger their internally to conflict against president Trump will not just with that activities investment research on China become considered on presence together about the have to prevent policies from moving abroad. The abroad proposes more business and a peaceful industrial policy to encourage by second home and abroad within localized mass production. Populism is inevitable. They're relocating to other states. That's Trevor in 23 new factories being built in lower cost market states with Chevron down here workers looking to saving less. A lot of workers jobs leaving low cost in Michigan and Ohio because of the bounty bidding wars. The state Michigan funding auto center moving away to be factories pop up across the battery built auto industry not to recruiting Michigan and Walmart. Day in says USDD tariffs are already there and that can also solve because of structural factors like industry commitment, low labor standards, and research advantages inserted by American policies fail and take US growth present. In 23, by American policies and maximizing manufacturing available product policies to go to innovation, national security, decarbonization, economies, and natural world, supply, whatever, addresses trade, software, reserves, productivity, capacity, jobs, specifically, ministry of stock, multis, and other policy cost jobs, US imposes requirements on procurement rate costs of government purchase, reducing before investment costs and sales, and foreign market, rural competitors, making efforts for business, no populism, back Ferguson, and 16, reality, responsibility, the economy, defining future, because of the military, not making today, political populism becomes a goal, not fashionable, opposition, not making future harbors of war, no more populist interested in starting wars, mark that, starting wars, no LIO impact, Sharia, in 20 years, independence, including environment, development, security, leadership positions, specific costs of international policies beyond global regional letting, we did 30,000 control other nations, technical capacity, physical advanced global, let's go central concrete evidence. Concrete evidence. Yep.
Status.
Conditional.
Net benefits to counterfeits.
The net benefit to the state's counterplan is elections and IRS. The net benefit to the advantage counterplan is the also states and IRS.
Okay, I want to ask about the advantage counterplan. Adopting a CBA without a domestic tax violates the Paris Accords. Why is the counterplan not officially illegal?
No, Paris Accords I don't think it like makes the counterplan completely illegal. We just probably be like out of lockstep. But there's some thoughts on that. Even then though, that's simply not the case. We can adopt a CBAM without a carbon tax because we can tie it to existing regulations over the environment. So the Paris just said that you need something to tie it to that demonstrates that you're taking action on climate. It did not say that that had to be a carbon tax. It just said you had to be like making emissions reductions. The US, like the EPA does a bunch of stuff. You could just like point to any of it and be like, there you go.
That's fine. The state's counterplan, why does the federal government say yes to the BCA threat?
The evidence that we read indicates that like the Fed has empirically agreed to work with states. The Kasika-Schultz evidence indicates that when states adopt things that not only does the threat itself solve, but also the fact that the states are moving solves, it says it would create, quote, more nationalized approach, and then says that gives the federal government the opportunity to, quote, tax carbon in the future.
When does the Fed adopt it?
I'm not Joe Biden. Like, how am I supposed to know, like, the day?
Okay,
Come on
that's
now.
fair. The oil decide what countries' economies get destabilized?
Which, I mean, oil ones, so, like, countries in OPEC, Russia.
Okay, cool.
The card says that their economies are doing fine now.
What
do you
do you
think
mean?
your evidence says
I
that?
think that oil prices are chilling now. That's key to their economy.
Do you
Which
think
is
your
that's
evidence
indicates.
indicates that?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. The fixed price Every app just has to have one price.
You
What
gotta
apps
set a
are
price and
profitable?
keep it.
Okay.
And literally, you just have to take the word increasing out of the plain text, and when the, like, if you think inflation's gonna be a problem, set the price higher. Not that hard.
Okay. The IRS, this ad, where do you think you have read a uniqueness argument that the IRS is not overstretched now?
I believe that we read a dissad that assumes that the Irish stretch is not over.
Okay, so
like, what?
it makes the assumption that you're not making
No, the literal first card says that they are fine now. The impact card is also self-evident because the internal link has not happened.
Okay, the state's counterplan, I want to ask you about like the mixed net benefit argument. Like Walls is already like getting like ad campaigns against him from Trump for things that he's doing in the state. Why, if Walls has to silence the counterplan, is it not tied to like their campaign against against Trump?
Sorry, you're gonna have to run that down again.
Yeah,
Walls
so like
is getting attacked
the
now.
vice president is being attacked for things that he's
Okay.
doing at the state level. The counterplan is a state level thing. You better link carbon pricing unpopular.
You're just gonna have to read like cards that evidence these claims. Like you made a broad sweeping claim that he's getting attacked now. I don't believe that to be true. You made a broad sweeping claim that he has to like come out and support the counterplan. That is also not necessarily true. Also, the counterplan like could follow on after like the election.
Why
You're just
does
making a
he-
lot of claims.
Okay.
And Tracy has an idea with no cards.
Alright, sorry.
Yep, I'm listening.
Alright, stop. We're at 824. Okay, it's in. It'll be the climate advantage, the manufacturing advantage, MBI is fixed, the spec argument, the regulations counterplan, the states counterplan, the oil dissad, the IRS dissad, the elections dissad.
And then IRS will be sent and everything off.
You run the decides by meeting.
Yeah, oil, IRS, elections.
Wait, to clarify, the counterplans was advantage and then states.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you saying that now or not?
It's sent now, but it's not.
Okay.
Sorry, should I be waiting for another bell?
It's sent if you are ready for it.
I'm ready for it.
Awesome.
Durable fiat solves watered down. The plan is the bill text, not the plan name. We get a spec 25. That was cross text. We fiat 25. Also substantial and search solvency. Russell 2014. The term substantial. It's not precise definition, but we use large sum of money. Fossil subsidies don't matter. They're priced in or evidence. The tax outweighs or is comparative. Pricing does not fail with upstream. That applies on all carbons. It hits every sector equally. And they're only studying empirics. Don't assume the high price of our plan or the U.S. market, which is the largest sector for renewable technology. As per the Rafi evidence, leakage is wrong. All sectors are taxed equally and hit by the BCA with into their China and India warrant does not fail. They're studying Zyker, who's paid off. They're going 21 Zyker. Science and higher than AEI, received $4 million for Exxon. No one would confuse Zyker for scientists. Or peer review, they say non-energy, but it's an upstream tax, so it hits it hits everything that uses carbon, even if it's just an energy policy. They see if ETA fails, they drop that you can use satellite imagery to verify, and also even if you don't know the exact emissions, you can use sectoral averages and apply them over time to mandate emission reductions plus durable fiat guarantees good faith implementation and enforcement. Otherwise, every app will lose. The plan is not enforced. Backlash. There's no impact to this. I want to see Clark's trying to India might gawk at the plan to be lining up to implement their own VCAs because it would financially penalize them not to do so because they would be paying U.S. treasuries. Yes, fish wars. Your is deciding the status quo, which is AFF inherency. And fish wars aren't escalating now because it hasn't got that extreme. But as the increase in the CO2 precipitation gets worse, fish wars become more likely. You drop sulfide rain now, causes extinction, and causes acid rain or cribbing studies. Even though he's a Greek dude, it's not that relevant. Also, your authors are equally unqualified. They say no impact. You under-exaggerate feedback loops. This is from a war strategist, not a climate scientist who prefer when he sees blindness, who says that warming causes extinction from extreme heat and also oceans of lethal UV radiation with the food chains until the biosphere is unlivable. That's Linus. They've also dropped that follow-on effects when pandemics, mass migration, water scarcity, fish die-offs, and unsafe geoengineering employment, wanting the planet in quick conflict. That's good evidence. Advantage 2. No impact. Ukraine, China replaces G with a nationalist warhawk, reverses their NFU and aggressive against U.S. allies, and is prone to miscap, triggering nuclear escalation. The manufacturing argument does not matter because China's economy is collapse because of unpaid loans and aging workforce, not because of manufacturing. But the plan solves by inducing China to pursue domestic reforms. They say they're doing some of that now, but it's not enough as per our evidence. No, if one of the NEG has is sufficient. The next part is not about EVs, so it doesn't apply. Those are key to U.S. Rust Belt, which is reverting to populism in the status quo. The next card, U.S. development, is key because the job loss in the Middle East, job loss in the Rust Belt, which is causes populism. Their card is AFF uniqueness because it says that workers are leaving the status quo, which only the plan can solve that. The Rust Belt is key because they're the ones being tubed by China EVs that are dirty and cheaper. Plus, the plan solves the turn because it induces low-cost EV development and solves the reasons why EVs are failing now. No LAO defense is wrong. It assumes the status quo, not U.S. democratic recession. Democratic recession causes extinction. Other terms are war-prone, aggressive, involve corporate pandemics, AI, and space, all essential, and drop by the 1 and T. That's Belfield. T. We meet, the plan's tax is fixed, increases it at a fixed rate. MBIs must price environmental externalities through taxes or market. OECD 17 MBIs adjust for environmental externalities by incorporating costs of consumption through taxes or establishment of a proxy market before first precision. There have no intent excluded. Actually, cites increasing carbon taxes as examples of topical plan. This is the 1 and T Allengar 15 card. Functional limits solve their offense, state subsidies, and self-help applicants filter out most apps. Good enough. TLS substance cried out. Next is vagueness. Inter. The plan must be topical and gets good faith enforcement of plan mandates. That's best. 1 AFF ground tax rate picks are unbeatable. Accesses every internal link and there's no comparative let. The next job is to negate the resolution. 2nd, solvency advocates, internal link thresholds, and context checks. If the app solvency links, if the app solves, it must link to cap, oil, and politics. 3 non-res theories, infinite aggressive and self-serving, creating a substance. Goes good enough. And that was from above. $25 is sufficient. Coming off 24, I'm covering. 23 requires the tax starting at $25 to 25. New model. Determine the price of the required to have use mission by 2030. The annual price margin will be 25. Breaks kind of well. Permutation do both. Permutation do the kind of plan doesn't solve international, so it only solves 12% of total global emissions. CES doesn't solve emissions. Board seeing Cloud 22 standard. Distinguishes clean from dirty, does not make distinction within categories, so does not incentivize clean resources. That means with the dirty resource determination is based only on marginal cost rather than some adder for carbon. CES would produce higher emissions. Transition is higher emitting. Board seeing Cloud 22 through tax is equivalent to CES, which turns enough to CES will lead to higher emissions. CES and tax result in different sector generations within the market. The tax causes accident high emission generators. The tax results in lower emissions. Then the CES on emissions and transition under CES are greater than for pricing difference arises from correlation in the generator operating costs and emissions. It links to politics. The 1 and 21 political costs is not limited to price based. Any common action gets its share from all sides. Doing a BCA is illegal unless you do it in the US too. That's as per the W2O, and it causes trade wars which escalate. States counterclaim. States can't tax at the border. It gets struck down until the 18s. FCC requires it laws be constitutional and applies to trade state level taxation. Get frustrated. Authority uniformity will be struck down by the Supreme Court. Policy requires board measures to solve leakage. State tax fails. 1 federal land. States can't tax them. Revex 22 producers currently over investment protection, but they vary for your cause, and also all the extraction of the cost of future emissions if it's not internalize the cost of boost onto producers and carbon data based on GHG to internalize the cost of fossil extraction. Second, enforcement, or not reading that. On carbon and fails. Card 0 says it works for a BTA, which is unpopular as per their elections link. Strike down zeros at grade 15 notifications day. I didn't see it's going to laws do back to Brown. It didn't work because it's not constitutional. Yet, hopes to control Ted Cruz. He uses his right to strictly Supreme Court of law. We have the supremacy clause. The Constitution is the authority. Rejecting uniform FIA, there's no comparative lay, skirts topic controversy, and FIA to after links non-uniformity solves their offense. The oil disad, Ukraine has lost by 2025, triggering full-scale Russian NATO nuclear war, has 24. Ukraine is getting unable to control tanks are too late. There's no support, ammunition running out, there's nothing to win next year, so kind of before already NATO use for Dr. War Germany. We have a war 2, so we related to Safe Gave me 11 year old become Russian target the listeners of the 407 from Morris. We ideal time seats operations like the local, this is local versions for criteria areas, they do increase politics in the UK. We take our top action ability and affairs off of black, hungry control carries like criminal affairs, mistake, contact will be carried out with superior forces, become that might use nukes. If Russia does not win, escalation will decrease oil loss, ends the war effort. They're fragile now. McCall 24. Russia remains highly dependent on exports of oil and gas, which is across the country. $130 million for Russia's control business for the economy. Alliance ability question is now gone with Russia. More fragile macro situation is such that time is now. Deterioration of Russia's external balance provides Ukraine. Now that's about opportunity to drop foreign influence, wall control, but impact of budget revenues that needed for military spending. Capacity to wage war, specifically impaired revenues, reduced by $3 billion we propose. They cut off Russian oil and gas. They don't have highlighted scenario for nuclear war. We get new answers when they do. The DA is inevitable. Or ticking time bomb. Page 23 traditions unstoppable. Call and cost one until their economy reverse incredible spending. Efficiency of ICEs is not efficiency in the delaying level transition. Once minutes peak, we fail food stock market to declining balance of oil prices. These are major challenges. Producers are prepared for the peak in all project states. Car prices will fall. The governments will struggle to balance budgets. IRS. Impact solved by case democracy promotion while populist who gets elected. It's like stuff in the deck chairs on the Titanic. IRS underwater now. Who's getting 24. IRS too slow. Processing tax returns by massive weeks of findings. Review trying to fall back the money. Extraordinary days. Inserting the breakdowns taking to 19 months to resolve it. Process returns. Quadruple to 9.9 million taxpayer costs have doubled to 44.3 million. The new employees. Now we're seeing that get training public costs result in 1.5 billion received and $20 million for the next 2 years. And the IRS is structurally. Okay, like that. Economic tax is simple. Never heard of the gas tax for intent. Tax is fundamentally simple. Easily administrative. The infrastructure already exists. The U.S. is experienced with the excess taxes on gas can apply with relative ease. Even a BCA is simple with the modesty and it's 23. CV duties similar to the BCA. Many of your experience analyzing imports, for example, the U.S. has 641 intermediate nations. We haven't said like this threshold.
But also, we've said meeting Paris key. The plan to meet Paris would be half by 2030, net zero by 2050.
Okay, let's talk about the elections decided. This Trump wins now card. Nate Silver, like 3 days ago, flipped his model and said Harris is going to win. This card is talking about when it used to be Silver giving Trump a 50%.
I mean,
What?
When
What do you mean?
read that card,
Disagree?
I'll go answer it.
The
Right
one in
now,
C actually read that card. It said that Silver votes Knight now.
Silver 58% chance to win for Trump.
Okay. Pass. Let's talk about this Kronig card. Kronig worked for Trump and is really, really hoping to get a spot in his cabinet. Why should we believe this guy? What? He,
Kronig worked for Trump?
Yes.
and he wants to work for him again. Why should we believe this guy?
We don't think so. But also he's
What do you mean
siding
we
with
don't think
Trump
so?
did
That's
during
just
his
true.
first term. He's citing empirics about how he strengthened NATO, increased members, he engaged diplomatically with North Korea, got them to stop nuclear testing. He
Okay,
worked-
let's talk about the Carafano card. What's the impact of this?
The Latin American thing?
Yeah?
You read the impact, it's just defense.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Not extra.
Trump calls it better. I mean, it's probably
Sure.
not extra.
Let's talk about the oil dissed. This transition inevitable card. Why does it not solve warming?
It doesn't happen fast enough.
What part of this card says it's slow, and what part of the AFF says that fast is key?
That card doesn't say there's a time frame.
Okay.
One is the Linus card says that we're not on track to hit. Or
Yes,
we're
but
on
this
track
card
to
says
catch up
the
with warming.
transition of our global energy system is unstoppable. The falling cost of
Yeah,
wind and
at
solar
some point
cannot
we'll-
be reversed.
At
So
some
what is the
point we'll
internal?
hit carbon zero. It's a question of if we do it before we hit tipping point.
Okay, this card says the falling cost of wind and solar cannot be reversed. Why does that not solve the EV scenario on Advantage 2?
It solves eventually in like decades, but it's not
And
solve
what-
in time.
and
So
warming-
Also, like
needs-
wind and solar is different than EV production. Our argument is about Midwest auto economy.
no one's read a card that says this means warming is solved. It just means that the transition is happening inevitably at some point.
Okay, let's talk about uncooperative federalism. This Graham card, I guess it's about state nullification. How is that identical to cooperation?
It's very similar. It's probably more specific than the one in C, Solvency Advocate.
No.
It says the federal government or the Supreme Court has this supremacy clause. They can strike down whatever they want.
Yes,
just
what
strike
card
down
have you read
six.
that the Supreme Court is going to take the time to strike down the counterplan?
Well,
They're
if-
like literally not in
if
term
state-
right now.
if every single state stops cooperating, we would have an incentive to
It's
do
like
so.
literally not the term.
10 minutes.
argument for this like Senate out of session that the act is after the election?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Fine.
Where that is.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I'm sending the document.
You should go over there.
Yeah. Okay. What was this thing? Okay. Yeah.
You're like saving stuff now? Or-
Yeah, it's working now. Okay. The order will be the elections DA, the advantage counterplan, the state's counterplan, tried and true Warman advantage, manufacturing. Well, not true.
Just try. Try to fix.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, the elections DA, the advantage counterplan, the state's counterplan, the warming advantage, the manufacturing advantage. Candace, did you all receive the doc?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, judges? Cool. Elections DA, conditionality is good, counter-interpretation, we get what we did, 1, neg flex, app sandbagging, and side bias means the neg means more conditional advocacies to have reactive strategy, 2, processing debates with multiple rules, challenge the app to sift through information and make tactical in-round decisions, which increases critical thinking skills, 3, argument innovation, debaters will introduce new strategies unless they have a fallback option, alternatives, overburden neg research, 4, logic, proving the counterplan is good, does not prove the plan is good, no offense, 1, it's inevitable, new apps, add-ons, link turns, and permanent explanations, 2, diminishing marginal utility, infinite condos, unstrategic arguments, inevitably overlap, 3, no skew, it's inevitable from fast speakers, short DAs, and T perms 2AC, and add-ons check. The counter-interpretation of the 2AC was undefined, and condo was barely explained, which means any new 1AR extrapolation justifies new answers. Advantage counterplan can see the permutation just to test competition. There's no cross-applicable offensive states. Counterplan, it solves the case. It has the 50 states uniformly implement a carbon tax with the SSC TA, which overcomes all implementation and uniformity deficits and creates state pressure to implement a federal BTA, but never fiats it. View the counterplan through the lens of sufficiency. Deficits must be existential and compare solvency to the squo, not the plan. Judge kick the counterplan if we lose the perm or they win. Our counterplan does not solve. It's a logical extension of condo, and you shouldn't vote for a world worse than the squirrel. First argument is irrelevant. We never fiated a state BTA, so we don't have to answer it. But they dropped our evidence that says that the federal BTA would be say yes to. This is a cardless assertion, and it has basically no response in the 2AC, which means to hold the line. A new 1AR answers follow on solves any residual link on the risk of a deficit. States perfect the plan's policy and change legislative dynamics. Policy in 17 innovations teach federal regulations change federal regulatory legislative dynamics. State civil laboratory when feds prove dysfunctional. States came up with improvements. Fed imitated the states years of climate and energy regulation at the state levels. Assistant federal market-based CPP as each state creates regulation. Private and public constituencies are invest in that regulation, and it's perfectly legal and empirically upheld. Callan and Wiseman and 2 DCC retains little currency cases demonstrate difficult to reduction hurdles. Parties confront with trying to track energy policy rarely over discrimination when energy policy motivated by environmental concerns, extraterritoriality, rests on pre-New Deal. Cases where courts struggle with tests have been supplanted by asking whether regs discriminate on the face passage of time and case law. Picture become a far from dismal, little room for awkward and misplaced analysis. Thoughtful programs opposition to survive challenges based on the clause. Their next argument is federal lands. 1, they have to win an impact to this deficit, which they do not, because sufficiency framing proves the counterplan is sufficient to resolve the effects of warming and Rust Belt populism. 2, this card says nothing. It just says that the federal government has not taxed a land before, or that the states have not done it as well, which is uniqueness for both the advantage and the counterplan, which means it's an irrelevant argument. 3, follow-on solves it because it results in the plan. It results in the federal government doing the plan. States solve federal lands, and the federal model for federal lands Dolan 13 BLM developed rule of oversight of fracturing. States have their own regulation. Leases on federal lands must comply with both BLMs and state requirements. BLM revised the rule to avoid duplication, and states regulate federal lands. Mills and 60, no federal law preempts state factor regulation on federal lands. States regulate oil and gas production on federal lands, and federal leases are conditional on compliance with state laws. BLM and 16, a federal lease grants right to explore, extract deposits. Leases are granted on the condition that the leasee obtain permits and licensing from state governments. The next argument is enforcement. They did not read a card on this argument or create or tie it to an impact, which means any new 1AR extrapolation justifies new 2 cards and warrants. Fiat solves enforcement, obviously, because if they get durable fiat, so do we. The uncooperative federalism fails argument. 1, this card is not about a state carbon tax. We read evidence that says that the counterplan is empirically upheld even when challenged. 2, this card does not say anything about strike down. It is about Texas opposing marriage laws, which is not the same thing at all. They have not. I dare you in the post round to read me this article and explain how it applies to our counterplan, or use it as justification for the Supreme Court to strike down the plan. 3, follow-on obviously solves it. If the federal government has implemented the plan, then there's zero reason why the Supreme Court would strike down or backlash. Now they say links to the net benefit, no link. Harris won't take the blame for the plan. Harris won't take the blame. She doesn't have to vote or support the counterplan. Voters don't blame the executive for state policies. Also answer shielding, Arsenault, and 6 citizens appear capable of making distinctions at the levels of government and where they attribute blame. Voters attribute responsibility for that issue coincide with the level of government that's actually responsible. And CO counterplan avoids controversy. History in 17 many political taboos at the federal level, less formidable at the state level. The maritime carbon tax may be more relevant for states. Spending is dominated by bread and butter programs that resonate, and even in a toxic political environment, a tax greenhouse gas emission would be considerably more plausible than federal programs. But the Fed says yes. Audience costs force the Fed to cave. Gherkin in 17. Federalism is a powerful weapon. Congress depends on state to implement immigration, drug laws, or health care, create opportunities for uncooperative federalism. State level influence policy forces onto the agenda. Defeating opposition costs resources in PC. Fed rather employ elsewhere. Republicans forced to compensate. They'll be forced to compromise. Gherkin and Revez in 17. The Fed and new capacity is modest when Congress makes a law, lacks the resources to enforce, relies on state to carry out its policy. That local actors, Feds can enforce environmental policy in these areas possible only at the state level, and creates leverage to shape national policy by refusing to partner with the Fed. This resistance is less progressive to set the agenda by forcing compromise. 3, Biden can go it alone. Meyer and Tucker in 24. Carbon tariff president has far user Pat 232 of trade actives. President's authority to adjust imports of product that threatens national security gives the president carte blanche to regulate imports. Also gives president choice of a policy instrument. Tariffs fees are quote provides president with all the authority to impose carbon tariff. This is not far-fetched. Both courts and Congress given breadth. Courts have been unable to find limits. Supreme Court bless presidential discretion to regulate imports. The last argument is uniform fiat. The state's counterplan is good. Test the Fed key. Only possible with uniform fiat. Anything else zeros counterplan solvency. That it checks small apps and forces better app design. MBI is a meaningless term, and any renewable subsidy is topical. Only limited out by the counterplan. Preferred NEG flex topic is app bias. Small MBIs are neither controversial nor unique. Multiple numbers like IRA devastate NEG ground against apps that run to the margins. Federal versus state is key to topic education. Beer and the fundamental question policymakers need to resolve is whether it's more appropriate for the state to act on climate change or the Fed. No offense, Fed. Key warrants are easy. BTA signaling legal arguments are plentiful. Counterplan unlikely to happen is an offense. Otherwise, every app would be equally illogical. The app also fiats multiple actors. Courts, Congress, and executive all have to durably enforce the plan. They also rely on states for enforcement. That's in the overview. They have no counter interpretation or alternative vision for what the states can be out, which means there's which means it proves its arbitrary topic-specific solvency advocates check Wiseman and Oski and 16 states may combine individual mission goals into one multi-state plan states with the collaborating states that establish multi-state existing plans, include regional carbon trading such as RGGI, and reject the counterplan at worst. Now, the warming advantage. The tax will be watered down to keep prices low and exclude industries. That minimizes the impact on emissions. Durable fiat cannot solve because it's a question of implementation. It's a question of implementation. Durable fiat only ensures the plan itself is implemented, but it does not ensure that the carbon tax is not the carbon tax is not gamed. We made a strategic decision, or they made a strategic decision to not include pricing in the plan, which is there are strategic benefits and strategic costs, and this is the cost of their argument. Fiat doesn't solve the plan to specify implementation details. Cast in 15 CTE is a shell game. The range of design price of claim benefits vary so widely, addressing actual validity proposal becomes nearly possible effect on emissions of pure revenues. Rhetorically spent to achieve multiple ends, even as with different promises, will be rejected by others. Now the tax does not solve warming. One, it's empirical. Most countries with tax haven't seen emissions decline despite high prices. Second, leaves critical sectors untaxed like transportation, ag, cement, cryptocurrency, grazing, and deforestation, and other carbon compounds. Is Summit 22. CT do not target other carbon compounds such as methane, which has large warming potential. Emissions from ag, depot, waste, land use are hard to assess and monitor, and non-tax policies are needed to limit other emissions, and that's true of a high tax rate. Lewis at 21. Even a tax at $450 would only avert 0.1 degree Celsius of warming and 1 centimeter of sea level rise according to EPA modeling would produce no detectable effect on any environment condition. Climate benefits would be minuscule. Their only response is that upstream the upstream creates a high price. We read evidence that suggests even a $450 carbon tax would be insufficient to resolve the effects of warming, which proves $25 sure shit is not useful for anything. Now, BTA modeling claims are wrong. The economic incentive to model is too small and diffuse globally. That's true for large emitters. Perry and 21 PCs might incentivize trading partners without pricing. However, financial incentives may not be large. Carbon exports from China and India to the U.S. are 3% of China's India's emissions, suggesting only a very modest incentive for those countries to start to carbon price. In response, seems unlikely these shares to be enough to impact domestic pricing, which answers their the modeling argument. Now, warming, there's no impact. One, empirically denied. The atmosphere had 5 times the amount of CO2. Oceans have absorbed all CO2 in the atmosphere, and it helps plants act as carbon sinks. 2, worst case scenarios are wrong. Schlosser and Kroll.
All three of you. Lovely. Concede that it says inevitable transition now answers the rush term because oil is due. There's only a risk of transition away from oil solves the case. There's no AFF. A card makes a time frame distinction. And if every degree matters, like I said in cross-sects, and the status quo solves a handful of degrees, IRS is second, C taxes are easy to administer, no office on the flow of the app. Solves the impact was answered on case by Stephen. Elections. Trump re-election versus extinction ignites global trade wars, economic slowdowns, as the collapse of U.S. alliances, which triggers wildfire proliferation in Asia and the Middle East, guarantee great power without stress. Or the dissensions in case 1. Trump rolls back the F and Harris will implement a carbon pricing, even if not. Trump guarantees specific climate goals up until 2021. The first Trump going to ruling everyone will survive binds regulations, troubles, and weaken institutions like Trump result of policy restriction and compounded advice on the ring. Investment trade, climate and prosper green industry, abundance of bullshit, new policies, such first attack on opportunity to deploy carbon pricing by 2025, creates future for negotiations, see what's normal structure, price carbon avoid terror, and the second third mind quote, price carbon increases emissions under Trump and global climate will be used Mr. Mining third target any help give you warm below. 1.5. Second, Trump views international cooperation and guts budgets for enforcing environmental policies. 0. Solvency Schlanger. The eternity Trump administration from EBS space from national international gender trouble down next reverse about the number of Canadian New Brazil, which is meant to climate policy, create updates and offer solar wind clean power division 2 EPA no doubt no budget cuts after Tara and has enforcement climate policy will stop. 3. Advantage 2. Trump will sell American leadership out to China to make $1 since 2024 because the second issue the entire issue will be Taiwan for years waiting defending company happy with the unity to us to defend one Trump no China. The answer to the record is Trump because Harris Trump said he was with a high wedding in 2018. Trump was training with China most people let Trump training about being tough on China. Harris from workers position on one side a good price for selling the country out. Uniqueness. Harris wins now. She has momentum post debate. It's a consensus of all major forecasts and national and battleground pros. She's leading on favorables, funding, and infrastructure. That's Manahan and betting markets. Those work. That's Surgeon 912. Higher again. The betting paper was only lost twice since 1866 according to nonprofit news org. Recency matters. All of the newest and highest quality F. Hazard surmounting Trump's past overperformance. State 921. Tiny polling average. Harris if you from the statistical that he afford any going to debate. Lunch garbage shares one national polls. Possible all length. That's performance. The battlegrounds at MIT stand for average Pennsylvania. Michigan. The constitutional one. That's a great victory that each other. Bell Trump over the last election. Nevertheless, Bell's restricting getting her favor. Whittling way Republican prevention. DC pursuit of higher quality was very different from the last election. Trump abandoned UC as advancing business 20. The deficit of which is trusted economies closed. She's ahead. Phillips 27 race of W forecasts that he would rotate from this polling. Eligible history and economic trend. The most of 50,000 jobs for his state. University tested one of the highest stock records of any forecast. You're going to be probably the most accurate of any. That's consistent with 538, 927, 530 is holding economic degree. They do what like that was Harris was 60 times out of 100 simulation. But Nate Silver recently flipped. That's that's 1 is Manahan and Beaumont. 922 is Silver Dagger, National Polls, Harris, Lee's, Harrison, good natural polls, better polls in Pennsylvania, Michigan, is playing questions again. The favorite until was model Trump the favorite till last Thursday. The link debate, the ash carbon tax is legal to Harris. There's extensive polling, there's widespread opposition, and on balance, there's a larger electoral effect than any turns. That's Lewis. I'm not reading any Hewlett cards about a carbon tax, but Teresi had no thoughts on its electoral consequences. Now, the distance credit double bind. Harris takes the blame for the plan, even though she's been able to strategically distance up until this point. First, the link magnitude is huge. We can not only reach general links about the climate, but specific links about the carbon tax's electoral consequences, which is we did not answer. Second, prefer issue-specific uniqueness. The past issues are priced into our evidence. Third, we also have link-specific uniqueness. Harris is controlling climate messaging, and it's benefiting her, which means there's only a risk of link. Third, Trump would campaign on repeal, even if Harris tried to distance herself. Trump's approach to climate policy proves he would make it an issue and promised to repeal it to force her to own the plan. Fourth, Harris has been able to successfully dodge Biden policies, but including climate up to this point, by avoiding a primary that's pile A2, while Harris is not passing straws on her drilling carbon tax election. Plus, there's not been a primary review with the session where she stands on the issue. Given an anonymous silver planet, not forcing on America, but war journal, fed life, CPM, at the rate of environmental reviews. Many TVs, foreign accounts, incentivizing rules through IRA, race, SEC, Harris is given Biden, so she don't have to say where she stands on the issue. She never make a conveniently flip-flop, but the plan's late-breaking shot flips that. The left is punished because of recency bias, as we say, 20 people.
We do not expect implementation. We expect that it would be gradually increasing, which means it cannot be watered down. We also expect that it would be economy-wide, which means that that argument does not resolve. The Lewis evidence is incorrect. Multiple pieces of evidence say that it works. This does not account for the BCA. Every degree BCA, which means that other countries would follow on. Also, every degree matters, so we should every degree matters, so we should try to solve for that. They said BCA modeling failed. This is wrong. A substantial amount of energy production too. Their evidence is only in the context of the energy sector. That is not the case. They said warming. There is no warming impact. Adaptation fails. The chances of failure are high. The testosterone kill our evidence is bad. We should not side on complacency. Rather, we should side on the side of caution. Because things like AC do not resolve magnification to other problems. Warming causes extinction due to a confluence of tipping points that make the Earth uninhabitable. We do not know where those are at, so we should not trust adaptation. It's linear. Each threshold of emission reduction drastically prevents extinction, which is Linus evidence. Also magnifies other problems. Pandemics, mass migration, water scarcity, fish die-offs, and unsafe geoengineering deployment into the world and into the planet in a nuclear conflict. The only things that were answered were fish wars and acidification, resource scarcity, and mineral decision making. Ensure countries of war plan, which is the camp evidence, the manufacturing advantage. We will concede impact. We will concede the surplus is not a threat. We're not going for any of it. The oil disaster.
LAOD answers.
Oh yeah, LAOD answers the start. Oil disaster. When Ukraine falls, so does all of Europe. Putin will be picking up the Baltics by staging an uprising and converting back to them. A divided NATO would miscalculate into a full-blown nuclear war, which is the Hauser evidence. No, deep into it means that it's the most probable scenario, but the plan solves. Russia can't sustain a war of attrition without cash. If oil revenue declined by $50 billion, they would have no capacity for war, which is the McFall evidence. Collapse inevitable does not answer the decide because Russia wins by next year. No evidence says renewables take over will happen before then, and we can see that their uniqueness that oil exports are high and the status quo renewable transition is not sufficient. No card says it is. It's a question of speed. Go assumes the status quo transition says only on track for 8.5 degree scenario, but it's catastrophic when it's tried for the plan. The state's counterplan.
In terms of trumpet plan.
Yeah, turn to the trumpet plan. State's counterplan. Drop the BCA scheme without illegal geosolvency and international ambitions as well. The Fed would say no. Their own election proves it's unpopular. Election arguments prove it's unpopular. CBA and extremely unpopular. The US would never do it. If they do it, it links to the decide basket. 24 organizations for solving opposition to carbon tariffs, rising prices for making policies, harms workers that determine carbon tariffs are policies. And the energy taxes are opposing federal energy is toxic voters will not. Mainly taxing voter sanctions those who believe that we limited by government and free energy markets will get allied to a vast majority of voters. They have zero empirical examples of the counterplan ever working. They have functionally dropped that it gets struck down. Stacey Graham is directly responsible because the United States chose to ignore federal laws. The Supreme Court would strike it down. It's totally ridiculous and proven by Brown v. Ward. Group audience cost and compromise. 1, it's answered by strike down. No. Card says the counterplan is legal. 2, it does not assume the unipolarity of a carbon tax. That is the unpopularity of a carbon tax. More political pressure is not to cave. They say Biden can do it. No evidence that he would. All evidence above answers applies. Also, even if it did follow and happen, it's not fast enough. 1, time frame takes years. By tipping points will already hit. 2, all the water down and gaming arguments from case apply here because it would be made way faster, not only fiated, but they get durable fiat. The US might do a CBA, but it would not be enforced or rolled back, so functionally no tax at all. AFF here, no card says the counterclaims BCA would be effective because they have a solvency advocate for playing theory. Conceded their research counterclaims need topic solvency advocates. They don't have an advocate for states pressuring USFG to do a CBM, so rejected plank. The only evidence that gets close to it is the Glare King, which is not a solvency advocate because it's not advocating for any action. It's not a carbon tax, a CBAM, or any energy policy that cannot be interpreted as anything. They get the rest of the counterclaim where they have the advocate, but they do not get the plank where they don't. We don't need to win offense because we are explicitly conceding their interpretation, but their interpret deletes Fed key warrants because it lets the states pressure USFG into doing action. It's Wilson playing that. Deletes AFF ground and ensures the NEG can fiat through germane deficits. All NEG offense because they get states just they need a solvency advocate. No federal follow on. Republicans hated that was above elections. This side cannot turn case at a roll back can't fiat it increasing dropped it. It's we see evidence why that's not monopoly on carbon warming. Is warming cannot warming chump will not harm it. Also it is inevitable advantage to we're not going forward once the evidence says it's equally likely the coronate card Trump bad is clear if you're mongering he gets North Korea to stop nuclear tests, increase US naval presence and necessarily stabilizing the Middle East. That's coronate evidence only. And that is that he works for the administration. That should be an author qualification because he knows Trump's psychology.
Does not work.
Yeah, he does not work. Also, he knows Trump's psychology, which means that it should. The only index is that he's using empirical evidence. The Thumpers debate. The only answer is that, or the Thumpers debate is incredibly negative. The Thumpers debate is certainly AFF. The only argument is that there's a very evidence. This is reliant on it being fake news. We have evidence that it's real. Second, impact is minimal. We got evidence. There's Thumpers. One, dog strikers work on Cameron. 922 and Oxford workers force go on strike shutting down the U.S. imports. They affected cattle. Economic impacted not until late November. Week for Lebanon. Immigration striking on October. Surprise. Waste on everything. Second, Ukraine and Lebanon. It will be. And 929 assuming the evidence got out there. Outcome of economic shocks. Super close to Lebanon. Major war marked hard. War the marked hard. War Harris distances from the plan. She's dishing progressive attitude to avoid more sailing critiques of the economy. That means she won't run on carbon tax with the policy evidence. Lisa said he's not overwhelmed. It's not a matter of the policy. She'll attempt to dodge blame unless they have a specific card saying she'd be tied to the app. Assume there's a risk that she will not. Trump campaigning on repeal is irrelevant. He has already done it, meaning that she wouldn't be tied to it as a matter of policy. Most of the cards here are answering the other portion of it, but there's Harris casted as the VP. The plan is popular in Congress. We can defeat over half the votes. Otherwise, we would not be able to beat a filibuster. I will read a card here. She's dodging blame for climate policy is not Bloodworth 9. The 6 Harris delighted the French very fact against J&D. These will political here 9 is not. But the smart quote of a public the vivid inclusion mass is good for policy. That's why she's good. As a Republican argument, voters law IRA is not thumb. Voters law does not matter. I'm gonna read another card. She can specifically dog tax solution Soki and 9 favors working in distance from Biden taxes to the Harris will have to increase the tax at a lower rate than Biden to remove it away from the White House as a signal she's working on middle class. Rose says Republicans tired of Biden's legacy. Harris reverse on other issues including the G&D Trump blame inflation on Harris.
629.
counterplan, then oil DA. Nothing. Orders the elections DA, oil DA, the counterplan. Oops.
Oh, my documents are not working. Okay. Everyone good? Cool. Trump 2 triggers extinction, extreme volatility combined with zero checks makes global trade wars, economic slowdown, and U.S. alliance collapse inevitable, which causes widespread proliferation in the Middle East. It outweighs 1, timing inheriting 2 active conflicts on opposite sides of the globe, increasing pressure to start a trade war with China and the EU, domestic political unrest, and zero checks in a second Trump term make Trump choose to escalate rather than compromise. 2, scope only takes 1 domino to fall to draw on every global actor and trigger cascading crises that light the world on fire. Heavily air negative, you can only die once, and Trump re-election guarantees it. 3, it happens way faster than the abilities to plan's ability to solve emissions in time to impact to limit the impact of warming. Our impact happens in 3 months. Theirs takes at least several years to reach reductions. There's a couple TKOs. 1, dropped. Harris solves the AFF, which both solves the straight turn and any residual risk of a BTA not being implemented in the status quo. We read 1 in our evidence that suggests that unique pressures are mounting in the status quo for Harris to implement a CBA in the status quo, which means even if you kick the state's plank that does the BTA, you know that in the world of the status quo, both a Harris election is inevitable, and she does a carbon price in the next year of her election, which means there's 100% risk that the app is inevitable in the world of the status quo, but not inevitable in the world of the plan, since they've conceded the link debate. Now, the first argument about Trump not turning warming, they conceded 2 pieces of evidence and unwarranted their assertions. Trump ruins environmental protections. 1, subsidies. Trump promised to cut EPA budget, staff, and subsidize fossil fuel companies, which offsets all the effects of even the most effective carbon tax. 2, climate agreements pledged to withdraw from Paris, increase protectionism, and pursue an America First agenda that believes climate change is a hoax, which makes achieving climate goals impossible, which is evidence. 3, the 3 zeros international cooperation, the pledge to withdraw from Paris and eliminate climate from the national and international agenda, which has a domino effect on high emitting countries like Brazil and India. Now they say Trump is bad. Trump bad is fear mongering. They've dropped the chronic. Their answer to chronic their answer to the chronic evidence is terrible. It just suggests that the idea that it should be an author qualification that he was a staffer for Trump is completely illogical, because obviously if he was trying to be elected to Trump's campaign, he would write these incredible articles about how much of a peacemaker he is. They've not contested the terminal impact or made an argument about how checks solve, which means you know that this at the end of the day is just a reason why the plan was disrupted. Now the thumpers debate. Framing issue for the thumpers. 1, they've dropped the 1.5 for Churi evidence that says she gets the blame regardless. But even if now all these new thumpers are brand new and should be struck off your flow, the 1 ER is not a redo of the 2AC. It is a rebuttal and should be struck off your flow. Even if they strike, they won't affect supply chains before the election. Mahoney and 24 talk workers. Striking back could be less. Retailers have been accelerating imports for months. Retailers have been forward stocking, expecting this air negative. Their evidence is speculative. Punditry trying to get clicks. Price is small, and any strike helps Harris. Sutton and 24 cost of pass along will depend on inventories. Companies would it be impact Harris and expect prices to decline unless price gouging. That will serve FVP interest because of the central of economic messaging. Biden won't get involved. Their evidence for reference. No Gaza thumpers. Harris has space on it with the left, culminating 23 the progressive rush over lack of policy details. Spans beyond climate. Biden faced rancor over Gaza. Harris dealt with less blowback from Palestinian advocates. Activists have given Harris more breathing room to advocate tougher border policies and walk away from Medicare for all. Now the next argument about Harris getting distancing from the plan. They cannot go for this argument when they have never contested the thesis of the link argument. The carbon tax triggers electoral losses. Voters don't understand climate benefits and only perceive economic losses, which flips independence critical to her campaign. Framing issue is they have dropped the campaign. They have dropped that there's only a risk that Trump campaigns on repeal, since they don't have a link turn argument, and their thumpers do not necessarily contextualize, since our link arguments create a causal internal link that connect both the link and uniqueness arguments, because you know Hiroshi wins now, which gives him an opportunity to insert coherence into his policy platform with a tangible impact that he could resolve for rural swing voters. Voters view high energy prices and other things as incredibly important for the election. They have never contested this premise at all, which means there's only a risk of a link, which makes them winning a bunch of other thumpers entirely irrelevant. Now, the oil DA, it's entirely irrelevant. Collapse inevitable does answer it, but the counterplan and the status quo and Harris implementing a CBAM definitely resolves it. Now, the counterplan proper, it solves the entirety of the case. Ironically, they extended the only advantage that the counterplan actually solved. It solves climate. States uniformly implement carbon tax, which drastically reduces emissions at the same rate of the plan and results in a federal BTA. Their new evidence does not their new evidence is terrible. It does not assume the status quo. State pressure solves Koani and Ye in 20. For growing interest in implementing a CBA considerations, competitiveness in Congress, there's bipartisan interest. President has authority to implement CBA under Section 232 of the Trade Act. Agreements provide an indication of how Biden is looking to advance carbon trade policies. The key issue concerns how adjustment implemented in the absence of price of carbon acknowledged difficulty without explicit carbon price. However, challenge are insurmountable, encouraging further methodology. BCAK, the counterplan results in one brand new 1AR cars. You should be striking off your float. Now, the first argument about examples, it's entirely irrelevant because the counterplan solves. They don't have any empirical examples of the AFF solving, which is a double standard that they do not, which doesn't apply. The SCOTUS strikes an argument. They have no reasoning or impact to this argument. Only we have evidence that explains the legal coherence of the counterplan and says that the courts have never struck it down on any grounds and their nullification arguments don't apply. But they also dropped the follow-on evidence. Busby says that the counterplan normalizes state policy making and regulatory making, which changes legislative dynamic and makes the plan palatable for implementation. The follow-on argument with the states would be doing a tax which solves to every degree and any risk that it's not fast enough. The counterplan, or now the rest of the debate, theory, it is entirely irrelevant. Where's theory? We do have a solvency advocate, but nobody has ever set a bright line for what that means. If you're unsure, then Stephen, I'm a topic solvency advocate, just giving the 2 an hour. 1 NC Bloomberg is advocating for uncooperative federalism. 2 NC Gherkin and Reserve is about uncooperative federalism in the context of the environment, which is the topic, and says it is desirable and solvent, which is an advocate. 1 AR offense is illogical. If the NEG reads a counterplan with no cards, the app should easily beat it with no cards and other theory checks. We said counterplans must be textually and functionally competitive on elections. Immediacy, which solves all their offense. Absolutely worst case, you can kick the plank since Harris solves, and there's no terminal impact to any of the deficits in the rest of the 1 AR. I don't even need to go to the case because the counterplan solves the only advantage they extended in the straight term. And you know that Harris implements a CBAM inevitably. So there's no risk of offense.
non-oil counterplan elections. Yes, sorry. Warming, oil, counterplan this side. Warming outweighs the only impact that's definitely dropped. You know, guaranteed extinction of all life on Earth is the only impact capable of making the entire planet uninhabitable. They have no card that says that. Their nuclear impact to extinction, only evidence that says that. Warming makes the planet, quote, or the whole biosphere, quote, extinct, which means that only we access terminal infinite future generations. No card, negative card will say nuclear will cause extinction. So our impact infinitely outweighs theirs. So it outweighs a categorically on magnitude, even if there's a higher risk of dissatisfaction or a risk that the counterplan solves that you should heavily and infinitely air from here because our impacts infinitely outweigh. They've dropped that warming term, which makes their impacts all inevitable. The convergence of global risks like pandemics, water scarcity, sea rise, migration, destabilize governments, which forces land and resource grabs, cost analysis, and war. It flips bad because countries would perceive inaction as existential, so they'll kill each other over the last morsel of food. They totally drop that NATO will deploy untested geoengineering AGI, which causes a miscalc in nuclear wars. Camp explicitly says it goes nuclear, which means that every impact of Trump is inevitable in the world of unchecked climate change. So we should maximize climate solvency. Heavily air on deficits, 3 points are inherently uncertain, and thresholds are invisible and unknown. We don't know the precise point when feedback loops make warming self-sustaining and uncontrollable. You should maximize climate solvency in the face of that uncertainty. Non-linear risks have exponential impacts, i.e., 5%. Even if the counterplan only doesn't solve 5% as much, that makes the risk of extinction is more than 5% higher because of the cascading and catastrophic and exponential risks of climate change. It's try or die. The warming makes every 200 impact inevitable, so you should maximize solving climate change. Now, in the state's counterplan, we have 3 levels of deficits here that the Twin does not answer fully. First is the BCA. BCA is broadly key. They drop that abstinent, it causes leakage, and other countries companies will just move out of the United States and import back in. So if they don't solve BCA, they solve 0 of the case, and it does not increase emissions at all. One strike down, they have no card that says the counterplan is legal. It can actually be done. They drop the 2 gram card that says that the counterplan has been tried and failed for the gravity board. The United States, or the supremacy clause in the Constitution says the federal government or the Supreme Court can strike down any state trying to not comply with federal initiatives, which means they would strike down the second plan for counterplan that gets them to do that. And I asked the cross-checks if they could name a single example of the counterplan ever being successful, and they could not. They say we don't have an empiric for the app either. Yes, we do. That's Marshall. Also, you drop solvency, and also you don't have an empiric of the plan not working, but we have an empiric of the counterplan not working. That was totally dropped by the 2 which means you should believe that counterplan gets struck down, and that it doesn't even allow the U.S. to say yes because the states immediately stop threatening the federal government. Secondly, the U.S. will say no. The plan is, or the CBAM is entirely unpopular. It vastly increases prices and wrecks U.S. businesses because they have to pay higher import costs or for goods across the world. So they won't do it. Their cards suck. If it was truly popular, Biden would have already done it. It says Biden is considering it, not that he would. Art says there's overwhelming incentives not to do it because it increases prices, and it's by status quo in action. They have no card that connects the states, this mechanism of the state's counterplan with a BCA, which is the threshold for them winning a deficit here. Any risk that they say no means you should infinitely air out because only our impacts guarantee extinction. Now, the real deficit is that the counterplan gets watered down, even if it doesn't get struck down, and even if the U.S. says yes, the counterplan gets watered down because it's not beyond it. We've conceded all their arguments from the 2NC on case that says that the plan gets rolled back, it causes gaming, and we would set the tax very low, so functionally no tax at all, which is all their evidence. There's massive economic incentives to do this because it increases profits for companies and decreases inflation, which means that you should believe that there's an incentive for the federal government to do this, and only the plan solves this because it actually fiat it, which means if you get durable fiat, the plan can't get rolled back and can't get gained. But the counterplan is not fiat. It results in likely federal follow-on. Even if they follow on and do the plan, they do it in a way worse way that is not sufficient to solve any of our internal links. because this is totally dropped. I don't think the 2R said a word on this, and this was explicitly in the 1AR, which means that there's no way, even if the counting results in the federal government doing the CBM is nearly as good as the plan, and you should infinitely AFF and artifacts are totally conceded. CBMs are currently complex as per their own 1C cards, which require a lot of enforcement moving towards that. I mean, the federal government won't do that in the world of the counter plan, but they have to in the world of the plan because it's fielded. It's best. It's just not a new argument. The 2AC answer, follow on, and also the 2C red new cards here, so we obviously get to make new answers. The theory argument, don't have time for that right now. I'll go to the dissat first. Uniqueness starts at 45. The dissat starts at 45%. Their uniqueness card said that Trump is like a close chance of winning like 45%. So at max, that is instant mitigation of the DA because Trump might win inevitably regardless of whether you vote after NEG. No Trump foreign policy impact. It might seem rhetorically appealing to say throw him out because he worked for Trump, but they have not engaged with or reacted with the claims that were once put on a card, and he didn't even work for Trump, and that wasn't a 2 argument. Trump was effective in stabilizing relations with China and Iran. There will be seasoned pros in the room, no isolations because he was diplomatic with countries like Japan, allies in Europe and Asia. In the Middle East, the 2 just totally blew off impact defense, and it said like rhetorical powerful words, but inside of warrant, inside of single thing Trump would do in the second term, or why he didn't do it in the first term. No, so it does not answer at all, which just means there's sufficient defense. You should not be certain that Trump will cause extinction, but you should be certain that Trump will cause extinction because you can't negotiate with the environment. Now, the terminal defense is that Harris distanced herself from the plan. They have evidence that says that Trump will campaign on the plan, but they were
There's like.
It's okay.
Wait, is it gonna be me?
You are.
Moving. Yes, please.
All right. Congratulations on everyone to making it to doubles at the Kentucky tournament. The decision is a 3 over the negative.
I can go first because I can be pretty quick. I think that the dissent outweighs the case, kind of irregardless of the counterplan, because I don't think the 2AR answers the argument that Trump turns the case for reasons that are external from Harris does the app, which as a side note, I don't think you ever read a card that says that. I don't think you said that, but I don't think you ever read a card, so that was awkward. But the 2NR does this whole spiel about how Trump like nukes kind of like Paris targets and does America First policies and makes international co-op impossible, just has kind of a bunch of reasons that Trump makes solving warming impossible, even in a world of the carbon tax. And so I think, you know, I don't think that they win necessarily 100% risk of the dissent, but I think it's sufficient that it zaps the AF and, you know, has its obviously its own impact, maybe reduced, but it's there. And so I did not see sort of the AF way out of that ballot without kind of answering these arguments in the 2AR. And I think that the risk is large enough to get them across the finish line in the face of that. Yeah, that's why I said I would be quick, is that was the long and short of it.
Yeah, my decision is very, very similar. I think kind of like the international cooperation between Spurs leads to fossil fuel subsidies definitely push the House and Senate to the advantage. Kind of on some of the parts of the debate that matter for that flow on the argument that Harris would be able to sort of like, you know, dodge the link argument. I think that the 2NR is correct that conceding the link argument might be problematic for this strategy. So the perception of things like higher energy prices or costs would be leveraged by Trump to sort of like be used against her. She would also have to do things like, you know, break the tie in Senate. So there's a pretty good chance that she would get attached to it. I also think like some of the evidence that we're reading, you know, it says that Harris is trying to distance herself from Biden's policies. I'm not as convinced that your evidence goes so far as to say like these strategies are actually working, that voters are like actually, you know, able to distinguish between Biden and Harris, where I think, you know, kind of their argument is anything that Biden does to get attached to Harris, and I'm not sure your evidence says it's like her strategy of separation actually works. On sort of like the impact to Trump proper, I think that the NEG has done a decent job indicting your pro-NEG card. You know, they've like read a piece of evidence that says Bernie's a hack, he was a part of the Trump administration, obviously he's trying to like gas him up. In light of that, I think kind of the terminal impact to the elections is maybe pretty big. You know, kind of like all the reasons that Trump takes alliances, you know, blows up the world, yada yada yada. I think that certainly happens. You know, I think kind of the timeframe argument that all this happens much faster, when things are willing to solve the AF's internal links and advantages. Yeah, I thought about the counterpoint, but my decision was also based on stuff.
So I like took the opposite approach where I did not really think a ton about the dissat because I just thought that counterpoint solved a lot of the case. So the first reason, or not exactly. So there were two things. First, I thought there was like large chance Harris does the plan. The NEG reads this like Evans card on Kern's case that says like Biden or other Democrats will do a BCA if elected. The AF evidence about plan unpopular is pretty generic and just says a BCA would be unpopular. It does not speak to politicians' incentives, while negative evidence is predictive, blah blah blah. Second, I think the counterplan results in state pressure that causes the federal government to implement a BCA. The AF evidence about the plan being unpopular doesn't assume the counterplan's mechanism of state policy leverage, which creates an incentive for Congress to meet states' demands. The two AF arguments that I thought were credible were strike down and watering down. Regarding strike down, I thought the card you read is just like not about the counterplan. It is about nullification, which is like states not complying with state law, which is very distinct from what I understand the counterplan mechanism to be, which is states using enumerated enforcement power to make the federal government's life really difficult. And NEG points out that they have evidence that says this kind of thing is like fine and normal. And then the other argument is the like CBAM's watered down thing. The problem to this is just that like all of the evidence that you put in the document for this that you've like conceded from the negative is just evidence that seems to apply equally to the plan. And so it's like even if there is it's like I don't really understand distinction there, and even if there is like a little bit of a distinction in terms of like counterplan, maybe like lobbyists reduce the price or something. I don't know like exactly what the impact of that is, like how much counterplan solvency differs in relationship to the plan, and so I think sufficiency framing matters here. Counterplan at least solves a lot of warming, and so even if you're correct that like impact to warming is linear, it's still like counterplan solves very, very substantial portion of emissions. So it's like any impact not solved by the counterplan is pretty low, means like DISAT doesn't have to be super high for the case to outweigh.
That makes perfect sense. I don't know.
I'm good for now. I'll probably go tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wait, sorry, I just had one super question, which is obviously like